I made a video recently talking about tree seed storage and ways that I store seed, tree seed specifically, in this time of year in the fall and through winter when I don't have bed space to plant out the seed immediately, or for any other reason if I want to store the seed and plant it in the spring. I want to talk about one exception, one nuance that I'm only recently observing. This has to do with one specific species that I'm having some issues with, Yellowbud, otherwise known as bitternut hickory. Okay, so I store most of my seed, most of my tree seed in buckets outside with holes drilled in the bottom of the buckets, holes drilled in the side, and I mix in some sort of medium. Usually for me, it's leaves or wood chips. It could be compost, sand, all sorts of different things would work as a medium. I talked about that a lot in my tree seed storage video. That works for most tree seed, all of the nuts, the walnuts, the acorns, persimmon seed, a lot of the fruits, pawpaw seed. I do that for most things, with the exceptions being dry seed, locust, redbud, those sorts of seeds that can be stored completely dry, like our annual garden seeds. And then there's also exceptions like white oak that sprout in the fall, and so you have to fall plant those. If you try to store them in a bucket, the roots will get all tangled up because they'll germinate, in fall and throughout winter. Okay, so what I want to talk about is, like I said, bitternut, yellowbud hickory. Flipping the camera around, we're looking at my compost pile. I didn't think to film this while it was happening. I was kind of in the middle of making a not so pleasant discovery. This is where that discovery ended up. And if I zoom in here, actually don't love zoom on this camera because it changes the quality of the audio. So I'm just going to move the camera closer as opposed to zooming. You can probably see some little nuts, some bitternut hickory nuts hanging out around the edges of this compost pile. This is where all of my bitternut ended up. So I collected a bunch of bitternut. Let's see, it's October 20 something today. I collected bitternut probably sometime in late September, okay? And I examined a lot of the nuts. A lot of them were really good. There were certainly some on the ground that had damage or that were bad. Some of them had the husk still on. Some of them had it removed. And what I noticed, I was checking the seed for quality because a lot of these seeds I'm going to save to be pressed into oil. Hickory, the main reason I like yellowbud hickory is that the nuts can be easily pressed into a really tasty high heat cooking oil. Again, I've talked about this in other videos as well. I have a video dedicated specifically to the yellowbud hickory. So the nuts that I put up in storage for eating, I did a pretty good quality assessment on. I pretty much grabbed all those by hand. I then grabbed a bunch of nuts with just a rake and a shovel and just scooping up all sorts of leaves and nuts and rocks and sticks and stuff off the ground that I figured I would save for seed. And I did go through those and I tossed out a lot of the ones that were obviously bad, that had obvious damage, cracks. I tossed out all the sticks and the leaves and stuff. And what we were left with was nuts that looked good, or nuts, and let me be specific, nuts that looked good out of the husk, no damage to the shell, and also some nuts that were still in the husk, so there could have been damage underneath the husk that I didn't see. And I stored those in a bucket at the end of September with holes drilled in it and wood chips, the same way I do all my other seed. Coming back hardly a month later, towards the end of October, I was going to plant those seeds out. I had freed up some bed space. I decided I'm going to plant the yellowbud seeds. Went to go look, and something was off. The seed was very dark in color, like you can see here, and so I could tell the color had changed dramatically from when I collected the seed. This led me to believe that they may have soaked up a lot of extra moisture. They may have been too wet, and so I started cracking them open just to examine, now, what do they look like inside? Every single nut that I cracked open was completely rotten, almost turned into a liquid mush inside. Completely not viable. And so I'm not sure what's going on there at all. I think that something about the storage conditions they didn't like. They got too wet, they didn't get enough oxygen, they couldn't breathe well. I don't know if it's that I needed to get them out of the husk. Like I said, some had the husk on, some didn't. I don't know if the storage conditions were just too wet, but this is still an early, I just discovered this the other day. I'm still kind of thinking about it. This is only my second year growing yellowbud hickory, and last year I got the husk off of all my seed and I stored them in the fridge. They were still a little bit too moist in the fridge. I did have some that rotted in the fridge, but some didn't. But it was drier than what was in the bucket outside. This is the only time really that I've ever experienced mold on tree seed that was stored outside. Up until now, I've only experienced mold in the fridge. And so I guess, we're just going to see if anyone has grown yellowbud hickory and wants to chime in, let me know. I'm very curious to hear what other folks are experiencing. It's not a tree that a lot of people are playing with in my experience. It's kind of like a somewhat uncommon tree to be growing. But I guess I'm going to move to more dry storage for the bitternut. I might just fall plant them. You know, if I fall plant them, they're not going to get as wet just being planted on the surface of a bed and mulched a little bit. They'll get wet when it rains. They'll dry out when it's not raining. I might move to storing them dry in the fridge. I might move to storing them in a bucket, but drying them out a little bit first and using a drier medium perhaps in the bucket. I'm not sure. But I just wanted to share this one little nuance in case anyone is trying to grow Yellowbud or bitternut hickory. Just thought it was interesting. It just shows that there's these general techniques that we can use for tree seed. Anytime you want to deal with a specific species, there's potential for lots of nuance with that species. I haven't done any reading on the matter yet. You know, there's a really good resource you can check out, the Woody Plant Seed Propagation Manual. The U.S. Forest Service puts it out, and there is tons of information on all the native tree species in, at least in this country. And so I'm going to get in there and read about that and see what they say about the Yellowbud bitternut hickory tree. Anyway, that's all. Quick one for today. All right, and shameless plug, if you're watching this video, you know, in fall 2024, winter 2024, I guess probably, I'm not sure exactly how long this will remain valid, but I've got bitternut, Yellowbud, hickory seedlings for sale through my nursery, both bare root and potted option. The potted option only for local pickup for folks. So if you're interested in growing this tree and you're looking for seedlings, I've got some available. They're from pretty quality, at least the bare root trees are from that really good parent tree up in Blacksburg. The potted trees came from seed from a couple different wild trees down in North Carolina. So if you're interested, little shameless plug there for my own nursery. But I'm happy to have you watching the videos and having this conversation with me, following along, whether you're interested in buying plants or not. That's not the only reason that I'm on here, but I figured I would mention it while I am. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.